Hello everybody and welcome to Bull Technology. This is my main gaming PC. I know many of you know me as a die-hard Mac user, and that's mostly true, but for CAD work and gaming, I need a Windows machine. I wanted to make this video because I've gotten several comments from viewers who were curious about the specs of my main gaming PC. This isn't the most powerful computer. As a matter of fact, I plan on doing some upgrades in the future, so be sure to be subscribed. But what this computer is capable. So today I'd like to tell the tale of this PC that I built almost 5 years ago. This is the tale of the Ryzen 7 1700X and the GTX 1060. In 2017, my main PC was an extremely budget-oriented computer that featured a quad-core AMD FX chip and a GTX 750 Ti. While that computer served me very well, this is what would eventually replace it. So let's talk about the specs. This heinously ugly PC case has housed 3 computers now, and it's definitely seen better days. I originally salvaged this case from a gutted Cybertron pre-built PC, and I felt no need to purchase a new case because I thought this would be a good area to save some cash. The problem is this case has absolutely terrible cable management, absolutely no regard for sound dampening, and it's also just completely falling apart. I definitely plan on moving this computer into a newer case within the next year. Moving on to the power supply, and I went with the Corsair CX750. My only regret here is that I wish I would have gone with a modular power supply to cut down on the amount of cables that are poking around in the case. But overall, this has been a really solid power supply. In 2017, AMD announced its new Zen architecture CPUs, and that is exactly what is at the heart of this computer. I went with the Ryzen 7 1700X, which features 8 cores and 16 threads. This was the one component that I was sure would last me several years, and it turns out I was right. I was able to overclock this chip to 3.8 gigahertz, and its single-core performance hasn't been phenomenal, but overall it has been a great CPU. When I purchased my processor, I was able to get a great bundle deal on this Gigabyte gaming motherboard. It's definitely nothing special, but I absolutely love the inclusion of 4 RAM slots. Cooling my beastly CPU is a super budget-oriented Hyper T2 CPU cooler. This is a great cooler if you plan on running your processor at stock speeds, but I definitely should have gone with something a little bit more beefy for this setup. My CPU runs pretty hot, and the fan on this cooler definitely gets pretty loud when under load. Tucked beside the T2 is my biggest shortcoming of this PC, the single channel stick of slow DDR4 RAM. At the time, I didn't know how much AMD's new CPU architecture relied on good, fast, dual channel memory, not to mention how poorly 8 gigabytes of RAM would hold up after just a few years. I definitely plan on upgrading to 16 gigabytes of dual channel memory in the not too distant future. One of the most important components in this build is my Gigabyte G1 gaming variant of the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060. It's a 6 gigabyte card that was an incredible mid-range option in 2017. Considering the ridiculous price of GPUs today, this also might still be a compelling option for those who want a less expensive GPU today. It still handles most 1080p titles, and it's been a great card for the money. For storage, I have a 1TB SanDisk SSD Plus SSD. This is miles faster than a mechanical hard drive, and I went with the SanDisk because this SSD offered a great value at the time. So there we have it, my mighty PC. Some components have definitely aged better than others, but overall, it's still a perfectly usable PC today. And to prove this, let's test out some games. Fallout 4 is one of my favorite games of all time, and even though it's several years old, it's still a good-looking game. At 1080p Ultra, the game runs at a smooth 50 to 60 frames per second most of the time. City Skylines is my favorite city builder, and this game is a great example of how dual-channel memory might help the performance. In a city of about 12,000 people, this PC managed to run the game at about 45 frames per second while in the air, and about 30 frames per second while at street level, all of course at 1080p and the maximum settings. Grand Theft Auto 5 is still a very popular game today, and it looks great and runs great on this PC. At 1080p Ultra, the game ran at a perfectly playable 60 frames per second for most of the time. The Sims 4 is an incredibly easy game to run, and no surprises here, it ran at a locked 60 frames per second at 1080p Ultra. 7 Days to Die is a zombie survival game that's tons of fun, and it's also pretty poorly optimized, but at high settings and 1080p, it runs at a perfectly playable 50 frames per second on this PC. Finally, we have Minecraft 1.18, which runs horribly on almost any computer for whatever reason. Nevertheless, on this PC, and in a pretty dense world, the game ran at a constant 60 frames per second at 12 chunks and 1080p. So after 5 years, this PC is still a strong performer, which is surprising when you consider some of the cost-cutting measures I took in building it. In the not-too-distant future, I'd like to pack this machine into a newer case, revamp the cooling system, and take it to 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I'll definitely be making several videos on those upgrades. But fellas, this computer demonstrates just how good the GTX 1060 and Ryzen 7 1700X were. These were mid-tier components 5 years ago, and they still hold up well today. And that's pretty special. So be sure to leave a like, a comment, and definitely subscribe. And thank you all for watching.